Iyman Gaspard, and I am Program Manager and Fulbright U.S. Student Program Advisor here at UNC Chapel Hill. I'm affiliated with the Center for Global Initiatives, which is, if you're familiar with SLI, we're on the opposite hall. Before joining UN Center for Global Initiatives, I worked at Duke University's Middle East Studies Center, where I managed Title VI funding related to grants that fund foreign languages and area studies, fellowships, as well as faculty grants to help infuse global kind of elements into the curriculum. And before that, I was in Canada, where I grew up. Originally I'm from Sudan. I moved to Canada as a refugee when I was 11 with my family, and I lived in Toronto. That's where I grew up. And I moved to North Carolina 4 years ago after marrying an American. So I moved here for love. And so yeah, and that's kind of like a short story of how I got here and who I am.
Awesome. And hello everyone, my name is Elaine Townsend Utin. I'm a graduate from UNC, graduated in 2012. Super excited to be here, the Assistant Director of N.C. SLI, and also running the Young Latinx Professionals Network, and super excited to welcome you to this webinar co-sponsored by the Young Latinx Professionals Network and also CHISPA. We're super excited to kind of this be our first webinar, so thank you for bearing with all our little technical difficulties that are not going to happen.
Yes.
Super excited about that. And as we kind of experiment what it's like to essentially share information via webinar platform and try to make it accessible to specifically Latinx students. And it's gonna be awesome. So we'll kind of start. We're gonna share our presentation really fast, but kind of walk you through some awesomeness. So brace yourselves, here we go. And start sharing the screen. All right, so
we're going to go through some of the scholarships that are offered here at UNC and externally as well. But we want to kind of talk about some common misconceptions first that a lot of students worry about, and that's what deters them from applying, period, right? Which is GPA requirements. So we're going to talk about a few fellowships that actually don't have a GPA requirement at all, and that you indeed qualify to apply for, at least, right? There are no age requirements. And then we also want to dispel this idea that you're not good enough to apply, because I feel like, well, statistically it's been proven that a lot of students don't participate in global opportunities because of some cultural barriers, right, that they hold, and primarily that they don't think that this is something that's designed for them or that they will thrive in. And we're here to tell you that, yes, indeed, you are good enough to apply for all these fellowships and to participate, and your experiences and ideas and knowledge is valuable and is well needed. And we need a different perspective is needed in these different opportunities, and the groups that you will join in these opportunities will definitely benefit from you as much as you benefit from them, and so on. So yeah, so some of the ones we'll highlight, some are domestic, some are globally oriented. I will be talking about the Critical Language Scholarship, the Fulbright U.S. Student Program, as well as the Apple Service Learning. And then Elaine will cover some other ones. So let's get started with the first one.
I'm going to say one more thing to kind of point out is that there's a lot of scholarships out there, so we're going to just give you some highlights of some of them that are here today. We actually really want to point you towards resources that can also help you find scholarships that are really specific towards maybe what you're interested in, or there's a lot of different motivating factors that people pursue these kind of scholarships for. So we just want to give you kind of a little bit of a taste, a little bit of a taste of seeing what's out there, some unique scholarships as well, and just again, they're There's so many different reasons why people apply to these.
Yep.
And then we're going to close out with some real talk, some advice from Iyman and myself, things that we wish we had known a little earlier. And then also things that we see common mistakes too, as application readers over here as well, that like we want to just kind of pass on some advice. And then a Q&A session too. So we really encourage you to, like, as you're listening to our presentation, to please like post your questions in the chat. If you have any questions, we'll kind of head that way and check out the chat room as soon as we're done with this presentation. But yeah, we're super excited. So here we go. We're going to start with number 1.
So the first one is a critical language scholarship, which is a scholarship that's actually funded by the U.S. Department of State. It is managed by the Institute for International Education, which their offices are in DC. Their mission is to increase the number of experts in critical languages. And what critical languages are, there are several languages that they offer. There is Azerbaijani, there is Bangla, there is Persian, Arabic, Turkish, Chinese, Korean, and if you notice a theme here, it's all languages that have geopolitical implications for the United States, and therefore they want to train more students to learn them and therefore use them professionally, or perhaps use them in their academic career if you're applying for graduate school. So to apply for this one, for the CLS, you have to be a U.S. citizen enrolled in a degree-seeking program. However, it is for students who, some of these languages are offered at the beginner's level and others are offered at the intermediate level. So it's too many languages to get into, but I highly encourage you to go on their website and look at which ones are at the beginner level. If you kind of just want to put yourself out there and learn a language for the first time that you have no knowledge of at all, I highly encourage you to do that. It's a very rewarding process. It allows you to actually use the language not only during this, so I said, again, the duration is during the summer. It's a summer language intensive kind of program where you basically speak the language for 2 months and nothing else. You live with a host family that speaks that language and obviously nothing else. So post this award, you'll have a language, you'll have a tangible tool that you can use to broaden your work opportunities, or to enhance your graduate applications if you want to go to graduate school. So I highly encourage you to apply for this. And another thing is that you can apply for it as a graduating senior, because you don't have to, a lot of these external awards require you that you come back and continue your undergraduate studies. For this one, this is not a requirement. You can simply be a graduating senior in your last year, go to this, once you graduate, go do this program over the summer, and then embark on a different, either a career path or apply for graduate school or start graduate school. So it just depends. As far as the deadline, the deadline for this upcoming cycle hasn't been announced yet, but typically the deadline is for November, sometime mid-November. So this last cycle, it was November 18th. So sometime around November is a good time to apply for this fellowship. Do you guys have any questions, or are we holding questions to the end?
Yeah, if you have any questions, sneak them in there. We're, again, a little bit of newbies, so we're figuring this out, but awesome, no questions yet. Okay, so we'll keep going.
What we do for a lot of interesting. Okay, so
she just read your comment, Harold. Yeah. What we do for a lot of
the second one is a pretty big program. It's the Fulbright U.S. student program that Elaine actually here did. She taught English in Korea, correct? Yep. In South Korea. Mm-hmm. So it's actually a program that's opened to for more than 140 countries. You can only apply for one country, however. They have two really big programs, type of fellowships. So the first type is the English teaching assistantship, and the second is the research. It's a research study, right? So you can put forward an application for whichever kind of type of application, a type of fellowship that you want to get engaged with. So for the English, it's a very simple, actually, application process. It can seem overwhelming and daunting, but just, read the application instructions carefully and don't worry too much about it. So for English, if you're planning on teaching English, you will need to write one page statement of purpose and one page personal narrative. And if you're doing a research study, what research is, so research study is you can actually apply to design your own research in a particular country and live there and redo your research for up to a year. So for this, you would have to submit a 2-page narrative, sort of like a statement of purpose, and then you will also submit a personal narrative. So in total, it's 3 pages. It's not completely overwhelming, but it could be difficult to fit in all the information in 2 pages or 1 page. So you can come and talk to me about this later, and we'll go in depth. And we also help edit your statement of purpose and so on. To apply for this program, you have to be a U.S. citizen. You have to have had a bachelor's degree to participate in the program. So it's encouraged that graduating seniors and juniors apply for this. You could be at the master's. You can be in a master's program, but you cannot have had a PhD. The deadline, so there are 2 deadlines. There is the campus deadline, and then there is the national deadline. And if you are a UNC student, you will follow the campus deadline of September 18th, 2017. And yeah, there's information available on our website at the Center for Global Initiatives, and you can make an appointment with me, and we could talk more about, your proposal and what it looks like. But as preliminary sort of research, if you are interested in this, go on the Fulbright U.S. Student Program website, select the country that you really want to either teach English or do research in, and read the country's profile carefully, because each country profile differs and requirements are different for each country. So that's the spiel for that.
Let's go to the next one.
Yeah. And then the next one is the Apple Service Learning. It's actually a program that's offered here at UNC, and it's administered by the Carolina Center for Public Service. The mission of the program is extending learning beyond the classroom. So you can, if you are, I believe, a sophomore or junior, you can apply for this to either do some service learning related project, and it's all here in the United States. But there is one program that recently opened in Mexico. You can apply for, they have 2 different sort of Apple service learning programs. One in the fall and then one in the summer. The one for the summer's deadline has already passed. It was January 18th, I believe. But you can apply for the one coming up in the spring, actually in the fall. And the deadline is usually October, sometime beginning of October. This past cycle, it was October 6th. So be on the lookout for that. And that way you can actually, they have numerous programs that they place you in. You can select your own program. It's very flexible, but it allows you to kind of apply the knowledge you've learned within certain communities. So you're not just, in a classroom and just getting a boring lecture, but you're out there active and doing things. Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, so now we're going to switch over to me, and I'm going to talk about more in depth about 2 specific programs. One is lovingly known as PPIA, which I think is so fun to say, but that stands for the Public Policy and International International Affairs Fellowship Program. And so this one comes highly recommended by Ricky Hurtado, who studied public policy, also business, and he just really got a lot out of it. So just to emphasize a few things, they do have an outreach focus on students from groups who are underrepresented in leadership positions in government, specifically nonprofits, international organizations, and other settings as well. And so while they do focus on international affairs, it's definitely mixed with local concerns as well. And so essentially addressing global issues makes diversity a critical goal in their entire professional public service efforts. So they select about 100 or so students to participate in their junior summer institutes. And so where high potential individuals are equipped with knowledge and skills that they need to succeed in graduate school and ultimately like serve in these really awesome roles, serving the public good. And so once they graduate, actually they have a graduate school consortium that's comprised of about 30 public policies and international affairs programs from across the country and the county. And so essentially these alumni also receive, like if they receive a graduate degree at these schools, they're able to like receive an application waiver fee or a fee waiver. And if they're accepted, they are guaranteed a minimum one-time financial reward of $5,000 from the school, but I've heard that they receive more than that, and oftentimes it really does help them get through grad school, so that's a huge opportunity. And the reason we put this in here is that you have to attend the Junior Summer Institute, so that's really important. The deadline is around, I think, January. So if you're not, if you're a sophomore, which I think we have almost, I think 3 sophomores right now, is that's something to like flag on your schedule if that's something that you're interested in applying for next January, when January rolls around. But it's a really big opportunity to get that experience. But if you don't attend that institute, then you can't actually be eligible for their graduate funding. So that's something important to know. And then this other one that I really wanted to highlight too, which I think is, Ricky has a few friends who received this. It's a pretty competitive fellowship, but it's called the Soros Fellowship. And essentially, this fellowship it supports 30 new Americans, immigrants, or the children of immigrants who are pursuing graduate school in the U.S. And so some of their eligibility requirements essentially are current seniors who are naturalized citizens or whose parents are naturalized citizens might consider applying for this fellowship. It's worth up to $90,000 for 2 years of graduate school. So again, if you're a creative, academically successful leader, this is who they're looking for, but who can articulate what being an American citizen means to you and how you plan to contribute to society, you should definitely think about applying. This is, again, they only select 30, so I understand that it is a competitive program, but it's still really important to, we'll talk more about hitting submit on those applications, because that, just putting it out there is sometimes one of the hardest steps.
Absolutely.
But this one is a really huge application opportunity as well. And so this scholarship competition, it is merit-based, and selection criteria emphasize creativity, originality, initiative, and sustained accomplishment. And so the program values a commitment to the Constitution and the Bill of Rights, which I thought was interesting. The program does not have quotas for any types of degrees or universities or programs, so I think it's pretty open-ended on like what kind of degree you'd be searching for. And then they encourage people to apply to reapply if they don't get it the first time. And then something else I wanted to mention here too. Sorry, let me like grab my notes. All these different papers floating around. Oh, here we go. Let's see, how they define quote unquote new American status. So as of November 1st, 2017, which is the application deadline, you have to be either born in the U.S., a naturalized citizen, you can have a green card, you could be adopted outside, so if you were born outside of the U.S., and you could also, DACA, students who have received DACA are eligible as well. So that's, I think, a really big deal too. So essentially you have to have been born outside the US. And then they have some academic standings, but I do not see a GPA. So that's different too. And also not uncommon to not see GPA requirements on these scholarship applications.
Yeah, I think a lot of these scholarships and fellowships are realizing that a student is more than their GPA. I mean, there are things that contribute to a lower GPA and a higher GPA that are not related to the student's capability to succeed in life, right? And I think this is becoming common knowledge now, and therefore I see a trend moving away from a GPA requirements. And all the scholarships that I highlighted, none of them require a GPA. In fact, they encourage students who have rather, a decent GPA or a lower GPA to apply and explain if you need to, right? If they ask you sometimes to address why your GPA is what it is, right? If it is, low. And then what is a low GPA? To me, it's like really subjective too, right? I mean, people have different definitions of what a low GPA. The point is that GPAs are not a requirement, so don't let that be a deterrent at all.
And so the next two that I kind of want to highlight, these are all really well-known scholarships, very quote-unquote distinguished.
Yeah.
Even though that word is kind of funny to me. It's like distinguished scholarships.
A big deal.
They're a big deal. All respect.
Yeah.
But, okay, I almost said something about the people who created them. Okay, let me contain myself. But essentially these scholarships, something else that's, while they're really well-known, I think all of them need to be university sponsored.
Yep.
So you have to kind of apply through the university, like UNC has to recognize you or support your application and kind of say, you essentially apply through the university.
Like the Fulbright.
The Fulbright is another one that,
yeah.
Okay, let me switch back to, okay. So the Fulbright is another example of one that you would apply. If you were applying in undergraduate, it's definitely a way to go through the university and apply to them. They also, UNC provides a lot of support as well. Like I felt really supported through my application process of talking to the person that was formerly in Iyman's position and just getting advice and like, what should I do with my essays? And like, even they do an interview round too. So that was really helpful. But again, these are also supported by the university. I think they do offer extra supports for students who are interested in applying these programs. They're specifically housed at the Office of Distinguished Scholarships. And so that's where all this information is also housed about these specific scholarships and how to apply to them through the university. But they are, again, very different. Some are very for research-based. Excuse me, I wanted to highlight one from it's called the Loose Scholars Program. And it does provide stipends and language training and individualized professional placement in Asia for 15 to 18 loose scholars each year. And so they welcome applicants from, either graduating seniors to graduate students to young professionals who have coming from a variety of fields who have a limited exposure to Asia. So they're really looking for people who haven't necessarily traveled in Asia before, but would like to learn and like to explore more. And that's also a pretty competitive program. But it's a cool opportunity to kind of experience it in a less of a research way. It's more of like you're kind of working. It almost feels like what I've heard from friends. It feels a little bit more like an internship too. So,
great.
But it's a big opportunity to get funding to travel. And so we wanted to highlight a few important resources. One is Office of Distinguished Scholarships. So I'm going to show you a little bit about what this website kind of looks like. So if you go to honorscarolina.unc, you'll see a find a scholarship or fellowship under their page right here. And so you can see, again, like you can choose categories, you can see different types that you'd be interested in. So like maybe you're in the medical field and you're interested in what opportunities exist there, etc. And so they'll kind of like filter it down and help you kind of find what's out there. I mean, there's so much information on this website and specifically at this office that's just kind of waiting at people's fingertips. But oftentimes people, like, I didn't know about this office until I graduated. So it's definitely, they're trying to get the word out more, I think, about the office, but it's really important to like spread the news that there's a lot of like, they have tips and advice, they have info sessions, they have workshops and preps, things for these application process. So definitely take advantage of that, application deadlines, but they also list, a bunch of different scholarships and some are about public service. Let me scroll down, some about science, humanities and fine arts, and also international and foreign language. That's the big one. But look at this list. I'm still scrolling. Like this is
a bit overwhelming, right? I mean, it's overwhelming even for me as somebody who does this, right? For a living, to look at all these scholarships and see what's offered, what is relevant to the students who serve. But the big thing from the distinguished scholarships is that that office, Honors Carolina, is actually trying to make itself more accessible to a wide variety of students, and not just make it like distinguished students, right? I mean, it's a bit of an intimidating term, I think, and they're trying to dispel this misconception. So do apply to, go look at their website. It is difficult to like look at all of it, you know what I mean? It's a lot of information, but you can use their searchable scroll thingy and just see which what field you're in, and maybe you'll filter down what other things that are relevant specifically to you, because you can't, obviously, this is not all relevant to you specifically.
Yeah. So I think it does take an understanding of like what you'd be potentially interested in, and even like creating a little profile for yourself. Like, you know, I'd be interested in traveling. I'd be interested in studying a language. Maybe it's a gap year thing you're looking for. Maybe it's you're ready to go into grad school. Like there's different, you have to kind of do a little soul searching and really figure out, you know, and maybe it's all of those things, and that's fine too. You know, it might feel like, there's a lot, but at the same time, it's important to do the research. I think we don't put as much time as we need to into our professional careers and like really planning and game planning for that. So give yourself the permission to be like, okay, I'm going to do some research on my life and what I want to be doing. And I wanted to highlight a few that are really important to know, that our scholarships are specifically geared towards underrepresented students, especially from marginalized communities. So these are important opportunities as well to consider. I think there's a lot of people I mean, like organizations, programs, etc., like fields are really feeling the lack of representation from, let's say, the minority groups or different marginalized communities, and how it's impacting, you know, whether it's the industry, the field, programming, I mean, leadership, etc. And so there are specific initiatives out there to really grant funding for students to pursue professional careers, to pursue awesome opportunities to travel. So take advantage of those too. That's a huge opportunity to get money to do the stuff that you deserve to be doing. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's how I feel.
I love the name of this one, Daughters of the American Revolution Scholarship. Wow, how specific. Yeah, that's
you know, there's a plethora out there. As well. So we'll get another resource that we want to highlight is UNC's Writing Center. I took advantage of this center when I was applying to Fulbright. I felt like I wrote my personal statements. I would like spend so much time writing one statement, and then I just like scrap it all and have to rewrite it. And they were really helpful in like helping me narrow down, like, what am I trying to communicate? What am I trying to say? And it takes work to like reach out for help. I think sometimes it's painted as like, just ask for help, but it actually takes work to do that. So definitely schedule time if you're applying to any of these scholarships to do that. And and
then it also takes work to accept and criticism, right? Like constructive criticism about something that you've written. It doesn't mean that you're incapable of doing it. It just means that you need to practice more and do more work, because applying for a grant is something more specific and totally a different writing style than writing an academic paper, for example, right, for your class. So, I mean, I personally like had a personal struggle with accepting constructive criticism, right? But then once you pass that hurdle, you actually, you know, you become more like, okay, well, this person is just trying to help me better write this specific kind of grant or whatever. It's not a personal attack. You get what I mean? So once you get over that, then it becomes a very, very helpful resources. So yeah.
It's very humbling. It's very humbling, because your work isn't going to be perfect, especially in your first take. And I think sometimes people are expecting like it's going to be a masterpiece and it's going to write it and it's going to be, you know, and oftentimes it's like, okay, that didn't really make sense.
Exactly.
Maybe it made total sense to you, but not the other person. So, it's a very humbling experience.
It is.
But it's worth it. So
definitely worth it. And it'll help you throughout your career, right? Throughout your academic and professional career. And I think I highly encourage you to get others, like peer review, even your friends, your colleagues, your faculty, in addition to this writing center, to look over your proposals and to kind of provide you with things, especially friends and family. You know, I mean, there's some things that I might not include in an application, and when I get feedback from a friend and they're like, oh my God, why didn't you include that time, you know, you went there or did this, right? So getting feedback from family members and friends is also a useful thing to do, because they might remind you of things that you forgot about because, you know, you're narrowing in on how competitive the thing is, or, you know, so that's also a good resource to use.
So real.
Yeah.
So real. Okay, and a few other resources we wanted to highlight, especially for our students who are undocumented, is My Undocumented Life. On that website, they have different scholarships listed out for graduate school, for undergrad, you know, so they have a bunch of resources on that website that I definitely encourage students to check out and see if there's any opportunities that you'd be interested in. I also put on this list Iyman as a resource because it's super helpful. She's here in the Center for Global Initiatives, which is housed in the FedEx Global Education Center on third floor, re-representing the third floor. But yeah, you know what I'm saying? So come on through. We're super friendly. Love to, like, I don't know, I've had students send me their personal statements sometimes too. I don't know.
I edit students' personal statement all the time, specifically for the Fulbright U.S. student program, as well as the CLS. The CLS, you don't need UNC recommendation, but I still like help students kind of communicate their ideas, why they want to learn that language, why they think it would help them in their career, how it relates to their current academic curriculum, and how they plan on using it, right? So all those things you might miss, you might not include. And then another thing that students find it difficult to talk about is themselves, right? Your personal story. It's really awkward to communicate who you are in one page, but it's also awkward to talk about things you don't really think anyone should know. But sometimes those very things shape who we are. And I think, I mean, you can communicate that in one page in a very compelling way, and I can help you get there.
Beautiful. So great. That's what I need, that in my personal life as well. So I'm gonna hit you up later. So two other websites that we wanted to show you and kind of walk you through is Open Societies Foundation and then Embark.unc.edu. So if you haven't heard, let's see, let me start with Embark. So Embark is, you want to explain this? Because I feel like
Embark is a beauty. So it is actually a website, a resource that was developed by my predecessor, Trip Tuttle, and my former colleague, Jacqueline Gilstrap, who I miss dearly. But I mean, they both came together, and based on the experiences that they've had with students and meetings, they developed this website as a resource to help students kind of have a preliminary research done by themselves, and then to follow up with them. So the first component of this is a funding finder, which Elaine is scrolling through. So this helps you actually, it's a searchable database. It allows you to choose what degree status, that your GPA, what citizenship, what are the citizenship requirements. And once you filter through all of that, it actually, you do an advanced filter, and it gives you all the fellowships that you actually qualify for. And then there's other fields that you can also fill out. So it's, I mean, just an incredible tool. It has more than 120 fellowships right now, and it's not listed in a very long, comprehensive, overwhelming way, but it's designed so that you can just scroll through the things that relate directly to you at the certain stage in your life. So like, it's fabulous.
Since most people here are sophomores, they just put sophomore in, and it just kind of showcased a few application deadlines that people would be available for. And this is like money just sitting there waiting at your fingertips to be applied for. I mean, this is nuts. This is such a cool website, because I'm like, I was always like, super overwhelmed by special databases and like, you know, like, look at this Harris Teeter Study Abroad Award. I would have had no idea.
Unbelievable.
This is amazing.
I didn't know such a thing existed either.
This is,
there's so many, so it's overwhelming even for us, you know, to keep track of all of them, right? But there's so many, and then you can also go up a little bit more and make it more specific, like GPA requirement, for example.
Let me like sneak out of here. Let's go to senior, and let's put like a 2.5.
Sure, 2.5.
Okay, we'll see. Let's go. What do we got here? Boom. Oh, still okay. Sorry.
It's just so these are the ones that.
So you just have to have a 2.5 or higher, and these are all the programs that are still people are available to apply for. And you can see the deadlines kind of listed here. If there was like deadline passed or whatever. This is just, or like deadline approaching, which that is really helpful too. So this is a way to kind of do your research. And for me, it's really comforting, the idea that this money exists, because I think oftentimes it's like, oh, there's just no money, I can't do it, like I'm just gonna like, you know, just keep doing something else, you know? But not take advantage of these opportunities that are here, because I just think that money doesn't exist. So it does, and this is a really great opportunity. Definitely share this with your friends, other people who are feeling the same way. And
another part of this is a global guide, which we have been doing a lot of trying to do a lot of work on to update, but this actually helps you kind of research some things that you might have, you know, you might be worried about lost wages while you're gone on this trip abroad or whatever. So there are resources here. If you click on any of these things related to identity, that will give you resources that are in the form of people that you can speak to on campus about your concerns about traveling abroad, or about, you know, taking an opportunity that doesn't give you monetary compensation but is valuable towards your career. So all those things, it's very helpful. Like if you want to study abroad and you have a religious community that really kind of comforts you, how do you maintain that abroad? If you're worried about being a person of color and going to another country, you can come and speak to people on campus about those worries and those concerns, and read some of the resources highlighted here. So it's great. If you have FOMO and you're worried about missing out while you're gone, right? These are all kind of different categories that will help you. Just read about it, contact the person listed there. If there's nobody listed there, you can always come talk to me. So yeah.
Awesome. Huge resource. Super exciting. And let's see, I'm going to share one more. Here we go. It is the Open Society Foundations, which I found really interesting. There's definitely not as many grants listed on here as Embark, but I still found it was interesting. These are specifically sponsored by Open Society Foundation. So if you head over to grants, there's obviously for grants for organizations, which I think for those of you who are in organizations, that might be something to check out. Just money, money, money.
Yeah.
You know, like, yes. And then they do award limited number to individuals, and these are primarily like scholarships, fellowships, and sometimes there are awarded to people to specifically attend graduate school. So we'll head over here and just see a few of the listings. But again, you can search via individual organization. You see on the side they have a possibility to refine the results too. So maybe you're interested in a specific region or a specific issue or program. So this definitely takes more time to kind of like explore and figure out like, you know, some of these deadlines have passed. So like what to prepare for, especially since you're not in the senior year. Oftentimes the deadlines are kind of geared towards that. But I also encourage you to like head over to Embark, for example, if you're a sophomore, and see what's available to you now, because oftentimes that's another misconception that you have to wait until senior year to take advantage of all this money.
Yes. And we are actually trying to encourage students to get involved in global opportunities and any sort of opportunities that takes them out of their, you know, their familiar zone. And as early as first year, as early as we actually have a program called Global Takeoff Puerto Rico that's designed for students who are freshmen and who apply before even starting their academic year, right? So they apply, the deadline is in July, and then they're selected to go to Puerto Rico for a 4-day fully funded opportunity that kind of introduces them to farm and agriculture and just kind of the challenges and limitations that are there in Puerto Rico. So again, we're trying to reach students very early. So, you know, there are some things, however, that require you to have taken some courses to actually qualify. Like, for example, if you want to apply to learn a foreign language, right? So we have a foreign language and area studies fellowship. It's FLAS for short. You, as an undergrad, you can only apply if you're at intermediate level of the language, which means that you have to have studied the language for a full year, basically 2 semesters. So there are some obviously exceptions, but in general, we encourage you to start as early as possible.
Awesome. So that's kind of wrapping up a few of the important resources that we wanted to share with you. There are more, so we'll be trying to send all of them your way via email or whatever route. But again, we're super approachable. So hit us up if you have a specific one that you're like, I would really want to learn more about, like career related scholarships. Just let us know.
Yeah.
So this is our favorite part. We've been really looking forward to this. We have a little chunk of time left, and it's the real talk session / Q&A. So we really welcome you to like slide those questions into the chat room box, and we will answer as they come. Yeah. So number one, I want to talk about this one is don't let your GPA hold you back. I remember feeling like especially when I wanted to apply to Fulbright, really my motive was to teach English in South Korea. That was like literally what I wanted to do. And I was like, this is great. This is money. It's a free ticket to fly over. That's how I was looking at it. And then people were like, oh, what are you doing? Oh, you're applying to a Fulbright. Oh my God. And I was like, what did I do? What did I get myself into? I wasn't trying to like go for the gold here, so. Yeah. And then that's when the insecurity started to little sneak in. Like, oh my gosh. I, at the time, I really worked hard to get to a 3.2. And I felt like that wasn't good enough, and it almost held me back from applying. But then I had an awesome advisor who's, now Iyman's in the position. In the form of Iyman now. the former Iyman, who was like, you should definitely apply. You've done so much on campus. I was a pretty big about leadership and big about being a part of my community here at UNC. And so just being a first generation college student, there was a lot of reasons why the GPA was lower than not. I still felt I was real proud of my 3.2. I was like,
a great GPA.
It took me that first semester really did me in. So anyways, again, I feel like I'm a living testimony to don't let your GPA hold you back from these opportunities. It's a really big, a big chance to really push your career forward, get experience, whether it's abroad or locally, in something, and getting funded to do that again, because that's money is kind of one of the biggest concerns, I think, with trying to be sustaining your career, etc.
Absolutely. Yeah, and it's a kind of like an interesting, if you look at it in the way of securing a job later on, right? It's practice towards that, right? Because once you get out in the real world, you have to compete for jobs. You have to apply for jobs. I look at a cover letter as almost like a grant statement almost, right? You have to sell yourself, right? You have to tell people that you are worthy of this position, that you are worthy of the scholarship, and that indeed you're going to thrive and uphold the mission and expand the mission and enhance it. So, look at it that way, right? So look at it, even if you don't get it, it's practice. You've already kind of, put your feet in the water, and you know what it's like to be rejected from anything. So even if you don't get it, don't let that be a deterrent or something that holds you back, because it's practice towards applying for jobs, applying for graduate school, applying for so many different things in life. So let it be the first, let it be practice run, maybe.
Yes.
With the purpose of getting it, of course.
Of course. We're still going for the goal. But two things that you said in there that I want to highlight too is the personal statements really do matter, or like the kind of the written part of any of those applications. Like people really do spend time reading through them and making sure that they match up with the program's mission, vision, their goals, and kind of who they're looking for. At the same time, like, do your interests and like what you want to do in the long term match up with what the program could offer you. So making sure those, like I always say, like, you're a good fit for the program's a good fit for you. And if those things align, you're definitely in the right direction. And then getting editing help is something, again, it's a humbling process, but it's very important. I think I had a lot of peer editors review my applications, or specifically my essays, going to the writing center, etc. Like, again, humbling, but put yourself out there and give them time.
Exactly.
Give them time to like look over your stuff. I had some like angels that were like, okay, I'll do this last minute for you, but like, don't go that route. I learned the hard way.
Do it early, so that, again, you're respectful of other people's time, and you give them that, the time to read it carefully and provide you with good feedback, useful feedback, not just a rushed kind of thing, like, oh, this is good, just whatever. But give them that time, and obviously make it clear that it's a draft or whatever it is, and then build on that. And another thing I wanted to talk about related to personal statements is that reading the website or the program description is critical, because in that you will find what the central mission of the scholarship is. And then from that, you can build on that. Think about it as a thesis statement, right? And that's exactly what it is. The program's mission is your thesis statements, and everything else you include builds off of that. So I think that is something critical that a lot of students that just miss, but just look at it as a kind of guiding.
That's a huge tip too. And in addition to that, like once you've figured out, yes, I'm applying to this program, yes, here's my thesis, or here's my, the way that I plug into that mission, yada yada.
Yeah.
Sending that information to the people who you want to be your recommendation letters really helps them build or like create really awesome letters of recommendation, not just like that kind of skim, like this is
general
great person, you know, does a lot of great stuff, but really go in depth with like how you match up to the vision, how you match up to that. Of course, giving them time to get those letters of recommendation done is always important. But then something else that I think, especially for younger students, like, well, let's say like you're a sophomore or you're first year, junior, whatever, is to start building those relationships with your professors and your employers, whether it's going to their office hours. It might be a little awkward at first. That's totally fine. But just like hopping in there and being like, hey, you said something really interesting in class today, and I'd just like to talk to you more about it. I'm just that, amazing student. Like, I'm kidding. That never happened. That was not me. But I still, like,
but
found.
That's a good tip.
That is a good tip, but also, like, I found some professors that were just, like, and there were not that many, I'm not going to lie, but they were just, like, connecting with, like, what I wanted to do in the future, or, like, just, like, really great teachers and really inspiring, and I felt like we could be friends almost.
Yep.
And so those are the kind of professors, like, once you kind of run into a professor where you're like, wait a minute, we could totally be friends. That's the way to really start building those relationships, and then in the long term, and maintaining them too, because let's say you leave the class, just to like drop by and say, hey, just checking in, seeing how you do it, oftentimes
or
department heads are good too.
And even these faculty could serve as a recommender for a job, right? Like my first job that I had that I really, really wanted, it was a faculty member who wrote my letter of recommendation. But actually 2 of them, because I just made friends with professors because I was kind of a nerd and I was like, hey guys, all the time. But I mean, they really helped me get that first job, both of them. And so you can build like long-lasting relationships, right? I mean, as Elaine said, you could go to their office and say, I really like that point. Can you point me to different resources that I can read more about this topic? That could be a starting point, right? It could, and of course, it would mean a lot if it's genuine, it's coming out of a genuine place and you do want to learn more about that topic. But and again, take classes where I know some of you are restricted to rigid curriculum guides or whatever requirements, but try to take classes that really speak to you, right? And that's where you will connect with that faculty member. And there's a host of mentorship programs here at UNC where you can find a mentor that that maybe you haven't had formal a class with, but you can that can speak to who you are and so on.
And one tip too is like, if you have a job where you work, like I was working 3 jobs at one point, which I do not recommend. But at like some of those jobs I held for like 3 years. And so my employer knew me really well, and he became one of my application recommenders for Fulbright. And he could speak like, I've known this person for 3 years. That's a big deal, that they've not just only seen you in a semester, but they've seen you grow across a longer span of time. So that's another little tip there. And since we have about 10 minutes left, we're going to kind of go through the next 3 little tips that we have. Follow up is key. I think that's really important. Especially, let's say you find a scholarship that you're like, wait, this totally could align. Like keeping tabs on that, making reminders on your phone, whether it's reaching out to the program coordinator at UNC, or even if it's at the scholarship, like following up like, hey, we'd just like to learn more information, or could you tell me when, if you're doing webinars, if you're doing info sessions, like.
The trick about that is to ask about things like Elaine just mentioned, like, do you have a webinar? Is there any additional information I could look? But don't ask, I mean, there's no questions that are silly, right? But don't ask a question for the sake of asking a question, right? Make it a genuine question, because I'm somebody who receives some questions. I'm like, this is like the first thing on our website, so I know you didn't read that, right? So be careful, like don't just ask a question for the sake of a question. So
I love that we have your perspective as someone who receives those questions. So thoughtful questions
would be something.
Do your research before you ask the questions.
Exactly.
Make sure that you've exhausted that. But also there's a lot of kind of standard questions too that you could probably get away with. Sometimes.
And a lot of us understand that there are some things are hidden or just hyperlinked. So if you have a question about something that's kind of hidden and buried, totally totally fair. However, if something that's there on the main website, the main funding page, don't ask about, unless it's really unclear, of course, right?
Yeah, because you're still making an impression.
Of course, yeah.
So that's really important. But yeah, definitely, like, if that person responds, maybe thank them for responding. I don't know, stuff like that. Following up and like keeping up. It is like don't look at it like a chore, even though it might feel like it, but it's really, you're just continuing on that journey and you're building that path. So next is a lot of seniors think that their only chance is to apply to certain scholarships when they're a senior. That's actually not true. Yeah, it might be targeted towards graduating seniors, but oftentimes people take gap years. I had a friend who did Fulbright that went and worked in a preschool before she applied to Fulbright. And so that was after she graduated. I had another friend who applied after he got his master's and he was 27. I know it's a little bit different when you think about the cohort experience to be a little bit older than everybody else, but he still had a great time and this is specific to South Korea, which is the best program. I'm kidding, but we'll talk later. And then also the last thing, unless you have something to add to that, is clicking submit. I feel like I've talked to so many students who started their application and not actually made it, or like even finished it, and just kind of backed out the last minute for kind of reasons that weren't enough to really back out. I mean, maybe it's like, oh, but this other thing might happen. I mean, you've not lost anything by clicking submit.
Absolutely.
Like, let's say you get it, for some reason you can't do it. Okay. You're not going to do it, whatever.
Yeah.
But don't be like, oh, don't try to find every reason to click submit. Don't try to go the other way around. And so sometimes that's one of my biggest hardships too, is just like, it's really sometimes, especially when you're in the moment, like planning for it, seems, it's like, oh, it's possible and can do this. And then when you get it closer to hitting submit, there's just that kind of intimidation, pressure.
Intimidation and fear of rejection, right? Fear that you won't get it and then it's going to be a stamp on you forever. It's not, right? It's just one of hundreds and thousands of fellowships that are out there, and the fact that you didn't get it doesn't mean that you are kind of unqualified for life, right? Like it's just one of very many, and I think it's good to like click that submit button, because and just forget it, just leave it behind you. If you get it, you get it. If you don't, move on. And it's practice.
Absolutely. I can't even emphasize that, because I remember applying to, when I was in grad school, I applied to the Mitchell Scholarship, which is in Ireland. And it was essentially like, I don't know, I was low-key whiling a little bit, because I was like, I want to do TV production, and if I could just study TV production, this could be a thing. Anyway, so I followed my own advice and I clicked submit after a lot of, hard work and getting those recommendation letters. But one thing that I did, and eventually went through the stages, the rounds, and didn't get it. But what I learned was that when I was making connections, especially I was new at this graduate school that I was making new relationships, and it was a way for me to talk to my professor. It was even like saying like, hey, could you support me in this adventure of like the Mitchell, which is, I know it sounds a little like off the wall, but this could be a potentially opportunity for me. And then long story short, like if I had gotten it, I wouldn't be here right now, which is kind of funny. Can you imagine that? Which is kind of crazy to think, like,
that's interesting.
Mind blowing. I can't imagine it. But anyways, long story short, everything does happen for a reason.
And life takes you to wonderful places. And sometimes not so wonderful for some time, but it's temporary. And so, there's
so much to be learned. Even like with that application, they had an interview set up. It was like a video situation. Once they submitted the application, they're like, request a video interview, but no one's on the other side. Essentially what it is like the question pops up. You have like 20 seconds or something like that to prepare. And then it goes into the thing and you have to be like, hi, so I would like to and you have like X amount of time to respond, and then cuts you off. So you have to like prepare your statements a little bit in advance and like what you're going to say. And you want it to be like natural. Anyways, it was a really interesting, I learned a lot about myself. I was like, oh, my improv, got to work on that. But like, it was still really interesting to think about how I was presenting myself and stuff like that. So a lot of lessons learned. We're kind of ending the end of our presentation. So if anyone has any questions, we'd love for you to just slip it in there real quick. I see we have not that many right now, but we'll sit for a minute and see if any come through.
I know that was a lot of information thrown at you. So any questions you have, any clarifying points?
If it was helpful, if it wasn't.
How did we do?
It's our first time. I don't know. But this
How
was,
many people do we
was
have
interesting.
on?
I think we have a
Okay.
few
Few
participants.
participants. Cool.
Awesome. Again, if you want to receive more information after this, please just slide your email in the chat so we can follow up with a nice little email to connect with you.
And again, for all of you who participated, thank you so much. This actually demonstrates that you are indeed somebody who is interested. Just showing up to these like webinars or to info session is the first step to demonstrating your interest and your commitment, right? And so, yeah, congratulations to you as well. And thank you, Harold.
Thanks, Harold. All right, so sit tight. Get it in. Get those questions in. The clocks are ticking. I'm kidding. No pressure. All the pressure. But yeah, we're here again. The Center for Global Initiatives, my office is 3014.
Yep. And you can actually schedule an appointment with me online through our website, through our staff page. You can go and then go on my profile and directly schedule an appointment. Yeah, we have a question.
Awesome. A copy of the PowerPoint, absolutely.
Yes.
We'll send that out as well. And definitely take advantage of those links that we posted. There's so much embedded in those. Really great, awesome resources. I'll rewind back to a slide here, but super helpful to just explore. And again, like everyone's coming from such different places and needs different things. And this webinar was recorded. Again, we will
edit it first.
No, I'm kidding. I'm like, cut. No, I'm kidding. But it was, again, this is our first time, so we'll have to
do some edits and see how it went.
Yeah, I hope it was recorded. Okay, well, again, thank you for bearing with us. I'm like, really, when it started off, it was recorded, but I'm not exactly sure on this one. But anyways, I'm gonna make sure it's recorded. If not, we'll try to do that better next time.
Absolutely.
But yeah, please also send. Oh, there's another question. Okay. When applying, sorry, let me move this chat thing over here. All right. When applying to multiple fellowships and scholarships, can you choose to pursue multiple of them?
Yes. So for that, I mean, it depends on the scholarships, right? So some of them are so demanding that really you can't partake in any other fellowships that you receive, right? So for Fulbright, you are only going to be a Fulbrighter during that year, 6 months or 9 months, however long you propose. So for that one, no, you can't. Others, you can. So for example, if you apply for the Foreign Language and Area Studies Fellowship, you can be a FLAS fellow as well as partake in another fellowship, but not over the summer. So there's two types of FLASes. There's an academic year and there is a summer one. So for example, if you're applied and received the summer, you can only dedicate your summer to studying a language, and that is just comes from for practical reasons. You won't have the time. I mean, you'll be studying the language for 8 hours a day and then doing homework on it after that. So there's no time for you to possibly fulfill the requirements for other fellowships, right? So it just depends on what fellowship you apply for. I am aware of that you can kind of use 2 fellowships at the same time for other ones, especially ones that are research oriented. So if you're applying to do a research project and you have multiple funding sources, that's completely okay.
And one thing to add, since you were asking about applying, you can apply to multiple scholarships.
Oh yeah, you could definitely apply.
It just, like obviously if you get it, you have to choose to some extent.
Yeah.
But then one more thing to add is that I can't remember off the top of my head which one of these is like you can only apply to it. You cannot apply to like the roads at the same time.
Yeah.
So that's something else it will state it in their website if that's a situation. I think like the Mitchell or something like that. I think I remember something. And they were like, you can't have applied to another program if you're applying to us. So some of them are very exclusive with regards to this pool because they're all kind of in the similar pool of getting like,
And the reason being most of the time is that they're actually funded by the same organization, right? So if you apply for one, they're not going to fund you for another one. So they just kind of want you to pick which one one's mission speaks to you most, right?
And they're competitive too.
Yeah.
So they like want their own applicant pool and not think that like, oh, you're going to go and get the rows and then you're going to ditch their applicant pool.
Yeah.
So I think there's something about that too. They're a little competitive within themselves, within each other, trying to get, you know, people to commit to like one. So, but those again are, I think those are rare. It's more of the like really, 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 really selected programs, which are these. Again, super recommend you to look at their mission vision and see which one aligns the best to decide which one to apply to, if that's what you're considering. But yeah, that's a great question.
Thank you for that.
Any other questions? I hope that answered too. Did that answer your question? It seems like it did. Okay, cool.
Awesome. Thank you.
Okay.
You're awesome. Thank you.
Go, Harold. Awesome. Well, we've hit our time. Thank you again. I really hope this was recorded. I'm like, I don't see the record button anymore. Wasn't it there?
It was there. I think it was recorded.
We'll figure it out, but I'm pretty sure it was recorded. So as soon as we can collect all that data or the information, we'll send it out. Thank you for your emails and lots of love.
Yeah. Hope to see you guys in person.
Yes.
Bye.
Take care.